Welcome to the four-step blueprint for reducing payment fraud risk, an expert practices presentation brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. And before I introduce our expert panelists and our partner sponsor, let me share some brief housekeeping items. We'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use your control panel to ask our experts questions. This webinar is also CPE eligible with 3 polling questions, so please answer each poll for CPE or to benchmark your peers. Please allow 48 hours to get your CPE certificate via email, and please attend this webcast for at least 50 minutes today. Also regarding CPE, you'll receive a brief survey directly after the webcast, so please complete. And finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. With that, I'm very pleased to introduce our partner and sponsor, Vendor Info, part of Financial Operations Network, or FON. Provides specialized self-service vendor portals that bring focused, comprehensive, and timely tools and support for collecting, verifying, and managing vendor information. Vendor Info meets the changing internal and external requirements for security, controls, compliance, efficiency, and scalability. FON was founded by the leadership team behind Paytech and the Accounts Payable Network. It has been instrumental in helping thousands of senior financial professionals keep their operations ahead of the risk, efficiency, and cost avoidance curves since 2001. Learn more at vendorinfo.com. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers. Phil Benko is CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Vendor Info. And Mark Brousseau is president of Brousseau and Associates. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you all for joining us today. You know, it's interesting when I talk to controllers, something they tell me is that they are feeling the pressure of fraud today like never before. And recent surveys bear this out. It's the #1 concern of controllers. According to a recent survey conducted by the Institute of Finance and Management. And you know, it's interesting because no less than the FBI, Interpol, states attorneys general, they're all sounding the alarm. They're saying that the way that accounts payable departments are operating these days are increasing organizations' risk of falling victim to fraud. And it doesn't have to be this way. There are strategies that organizations can take to increase their maturity in mitigating their risk of fraud prevention. And that is what we're going to discuss today. We'll talk about the 4 stages of AP fraud prevention maturity and help you plot where your organization currently falls. We'll talk about risks in vendor onboarding and bank account change requests, probably the #1 way that organizations are being targeted these days. We'll take a deep dive into verification versus validation of information. You might think your organization is protecting itself if it verifies vendors, when in reality, what it needs to be doing is validating the authenticity of information. We'll also
Mark,
talk. Yes.
Mark, can you go up and share your screen, please? On the toolbar. Share.
I apologize. It
applications. Yeah, you got to look at the application, share your PowerPoint. No problem.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can take it back as well.
Yeah, I think you might need to because it says it's sharing. Let's see. Let's try it one more time.
Looking promising. Now, yeah, now just make it, yeah, we're good.
Are we here?
Yes, we're here. Yay.
All right. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there. And finally, we'll provide you with a blueprint for reducing your risk of payment fraud. But before I do any of that, we wanted to start with a poll question, which is now displayed on your screen. We want to know, how would you rate your AP fraud prevention program? How would you rate your AP fraud prevention program? Would you describe your AP fraud prevention program as early stage, as developing, as mature, highly advanced, or you're not sure where your organization's AP fraud prevention program stands? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. Phil, when you're talking to controllers, uh, how are they feeling about their organization's risks of falling victim to fraud these days?
It's a great question, Mark. Most people feel that they're under attack because the fraudsters have become so sophisticated and so adept at using uh, very powerful tools uh, that can be concealed very easily, and they are continually looking for ways to improve their processes and make sure they're protected. It's really an ongoing it's battle between the good guys and the fraudsters. Uh, they feel that it's an arms race almost in many respects.
I imagine, Phil, that a lot of the controllers listening into this conversation today are saying, well, hold on a second here. We have policies and procedures in place for how it is we onboard suppliers and verify bank account change requests. What are you talking about maturity? Don't we have our bases covered? What's the fallacy in that thinking, Phil?
Yeah, well, the question is, what is mature in an ever-changing environment? It's tough, and it's interesting seeing these poll results uh, that really a third so show that they're mature, but only 4% of the folks think that this is highly advanced, and 29% feel that it's developing. They're developing their program. I think the programs are always under development because the circumstances are changing. The tools that the fraudsters have to work with are getting better. The bad guys are generally the early adopters of all new technologies, and uh, we need to make sure that our systems are evolving to keep up with what's going on out there.
What do you think is the biggest misperception controllers have about their organization's fraud prevention program? In other words, the thing that is leaving them unwittingly most at risk of fraud?
You know, most of the time nobody knows where or when the next attack is going to take place, and or how it's going to take place. 2 years ago, 18 months ago, we never heard about telephone systems getting hacked,
Mhm.
uh, and taking calls from vendors' customers about the veracity of a bank account change. Today, we're hearing it all the time. Folks said, we're calling folks, and we at one point, I mean, several people are telling us they got scammed because they thought they were talking to their supplier, but they were actually talking to the fraudster.
And as you suggested, Phil, our poll results show that many of the folks on the line today would say that they are not highly advanced. Well, rest assured, during today's webinar, we're going to provide you with a roadmap for increasing the maturity of your organization's fraud prevention program. And when we look at fraud prevention in organizations, we would argue that there's really four stages of AP fraud prevention maturity. And make no mistake about it, AP has become ground zero for fraud. It is under attack. And you might argue that fraud has always been a part of the accounts payable landscape. But as Phil suggested, things are changing these days, and the fraudsters have become more sophisticated, more brazen, and more organized. And there's a couple of ways in which this is really showing up in our AP departments. The first, of course, is the prevalence of digital invoices, right? Used to be in the past that invoices came through the mail. Well, that all changed in a big way during the pandemic. Now, today, many organizations receive 80 or 90% of all of the invoices from suppliers via email. And unfortunately, we know that email and phishing attacks in particular are a prime on ramp for fraudulent schemes. In many cases, things like business email compromise can be traced directly back to a fraudster being able to infiltrate someone's email box, whether that's one of your coworkers or a trusted supplier. And that alone should give controllers pause, because it's not just how well you're doing or your organization is doing at protecting its email. It also comes back to how good a job are your suppliers doing at protecting their email, something we can't always be able to control. We also find that today organizations are at greater risk because of the prevalence of AI generated communications. As Phil said, today you can never be sure who's on the other side of an email, but that's even true when it comes to texts and to voicemail messages, and now increasingly even video messages. Perhaps you've seen some of the recent stories about organizations who, via video conferencing, to verify information or requiring the person on the other end to hold up three fingers in front of their face, something that AI tools can't easily do. This is the type of environment we're in. And our AP folks, who are already burdened with work and more pressures, now they've got to try to figure out whether the person on the other end of the phone or the text or even the video is actually who they say they are. We also find that today fraud is more of a global function. And today, many businesses, even small ones, do business globally. And this introduces even more complexity into the process of verifying bank account change requests. Now, when we're trying to verify entities with international bank accounts, we have to deal with things like differences in languages, time zones, and banking regulations, and a lack of databases. All of this creates more opportunity for fraudsters to do their thing. And finally, AI has made it so that today's fraud attacks can become increasingly sophisticated. One recent fraud scheme that was broken up had 500 employees. It was financially backed by a rogue Eastern European nation. It had an HR department to recruit fraudsters, and it had a marketing department